didn't even have to earn it yet. I remember that well. I think we were at El Camino. It was great. I remember I asked him, like, what does a chief innovation officer do at the College of Nursing? And you gave this amazing response, which was, for the longest time, nurses have been entrepreneurs within the healthcare system. They just call everything workarounds. And I was like, that's amazing. That's really something. So yeah, been awesome getting to know Tim over the last couple of years. Happy to speak with you guys here today. As Tim said, my background's in entrepreneurship and startups, and so execution is something that is near and dear to my heart. Right now, I kind of bill myself as a writer and community builder. As Tim said, I write a daily blog. There's a little shout out to it at the bottom right of every screen of this presentation if you want to check it out. But I write that every day in an email format, and I've been building community here locally and nationally for a long time, both through my business with Unreal Collective and through Startup Weekend, an event that I organize, which I'll talk about. Unreal Collective is a community of people who are executing, people who are action-oriented and working on their own independent projects. I put them in small groups, small working groups of 5. I facilitate weekly calls every week for 12 weeks and help them get from point A to point B with their project or business. So it's a lot of fun. And like I said, execution is something that's near and dear to my heart. Startup Weekend is an event not super unlike what you guys did here over the last couple of days. I attended my first Startup Weekend in 2012. It's 3 days, 54 hours, where you conceptualize, validate, and build a startup company. And that's pretty intense, but we put you in a room with 100 people with backgrounds in design, engineering, marketing, law, nursing, anything you can think of. Everybody has the opportunity to pitch an idea. At the end of Friday night, after the idea's been pitched, teams sort of organically form around those ideas, and through the rest of Friday, through Saturday, through Sunday, you're building an MVP of that business, validating it out in the market, and putting a presentation together for a panel of judges to look at the merit of that business. And it's a really amazing microcosm and learning opportunity. I did my first Startup Weekend in 2012. That's me. Much less bearded. Somehow my hair actually got thicker, which is great for me. We had an amazing team here. Actually, Susie here sitting next to me, she was employee 38, I think, at Cover My Meds. And these two guys, the guy in the top right and the guy in the back left, co-founded a company in Cincinnati called Listener that's raised millions of dollars and done a lot of really legitimate work. And the guy in the bottom left is at one of the best graphic design firms in the country in Washington, D.C. So pretty legitimate team I just found myself thrown into at a pretty young age. And we built this application, this mobile application called ManCard, which is a fun little idea that basically manifested as like an Instagram feed. Right when Instagram was kicking off, you could post photos of your friends doing manly or unmanly things, voted as manly or unmanly, and that affected your ManCard score. You could also run, we had corporate challenges. We worked with this energy drink called Cajones energy drink, which was just like 5-hour energy essentially, and we ran competitions to see who won the Cajones badge, and he actually did not win. I think he was robbed because that's the manliest thing I've ever seen. And so we did that for a little bit. We ran with that. We had, like I said, some corporate deals. It was really cool. We got into TechCrunch. We thought we were on top of the world, and then we gave up because it's really hard. Those guys, like I said, our engineers went and started another business that had more legs. The designer was just like, well, I can't engineer this. And Susie and I said, well, we can hustle deals all day, but if we don't build the platform, we can't continue moving forward. So we gave up. And that's the thing about Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend, like you guys probably experienced here the last couple of days, you get all kinds of energy. All kinds of energy. That was kind of a joke. We always do a couple photos. One where we're like, okay, take one where you're really tired. Now be really excited. And it's amazing. And you're there and you think that your idea is going to be the next big thing. Everyone's convinced of that. You think that you're going to change the world. And I can tell you, with over 350,000 individuals who have gone through Startup Weekends, 12,000 organizers globally, 1,300 cities or more globally, only 12% of companies that are started at those weekends move forward. And that's okay. And failure is okay. A lot of them move forward like we did and they fail. And that's okay, because community, the people you meet, most of the time, is greater than the idea that you tried out and piloted at that weekend. The lessons learned is greater than the idea that you piloted during that weekend. So I've been doing that for 5 years, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds of ideas die. And a lot of them are good ideas, but they're a dime a dozen. Without execution, without moving forward and doing something with those ideas, they're a dime a dozen. And that's why I was saying earlier, talk to anyone you can, because this idea won't be your last idea. It's certainly not your first idea. But if you're actually going to make something happen, you've got to go execute on that. And a lot of that comes from working with other people. So one more personal story. In 2014, I joined the founding team of a company called Tixers. And the original founder is here in the middle, Alex. This is AJ. He joined our team in 2015. It was a ticket marketplace that actually came out of Startup Weekend, so we were the 12%, which is pretty cool. One Startup Weekend in Cincinnati, and in 2014 I joined Alex to build out this platform. He focused on business development. I focused on developing the platform itself. We went through an accelerator in Kentucky called UpTech, which is built to help get things started. They say, we believe in your idea, we're going to give you $50,000, we're going to give you office space and a bunch of mentorship, we're going to help you get this to the next level so that this can become something, so it's not just an idea anymore. And so we started going down that path. We raised funding after UpTech. I built the platform for years. This is like the final iteration of that platform, not that different from any other ticketing website you would see. It was a lot of fun. This is my most proud thing. The amount of work to make this real was so much. This is what I was working on at Apropos. We had some highs. We had even lower lows, and it was constant. You were either like really up or you're really down, but good things happened. We worked really hard, and we got it to a point where there's a company in Florida who was building mobile apps for teams, the Washington Redskins, the New York Jets, Villanova Wildcats, Los Angeles Lakers, and they said, we want your technology, we want to roll that into our technology, and so they bought our company. I got to bro down, right? We even got a billboard in Kentucky that congratulated us, which is a little bit of a humble brag on my part. But we executed. We did the thing, right? And it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. Actually, at one point, for about 24 hours, I told my team that I was quitting in 2014. I said, I can't do this anymore. Actually, I guess it's 2015. I said, I can't do this anymore. I don't think I want to go on this next stage of the journey after we're bought. I don't want to work for this company for a year. And they talked me off that ledge, but that's not uncommon. Like, those lows can be pretty low, and you get bummed out, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But if you're going to really make it happen, if you're really going to execute, you got to push yourself to those limits. And so now, what I do with Unreal Collective, as I was saying earlier, I work with dozens of entrepreneurs who are taking their ideas from point A to point B, and I'm helping them to do that. But with my background in Startup Weekend and with Unreal Collective, I've identified about 7 traits of people and who really go forward and execute. Seven things that people do to truly take their idea to reality. The first is they're action-oriented. And this is something that I'm very biased towards. If you're going to actually make this happen, you have to be constantly taking action. And I think now it's amazing the amount of information that is available to you in the form of articles, podcasts, books, newsletters you can subscribe to, like mine at jclouse.com. But if you just, that was a joke, if you just consume all of the time, you get this feeling of like, I'm accomplishing, because you have that proximity to accomplishment, because you're like consuming what it takes, and you get the same actual like physiological feeling of doing things. The people who are successful and actually execute are very action-oriented. They're going out and they're validating that idea. They're going and talking to potential customers. They're going and selling to customers. They're going and solving problems, getting their hands dirty, and really spending a lot of time doing it. They're organized and they're intentional. That business model canvas, they work through that. They figure out, okay, what are the steps that I need to do to actually make these things happen How do I do that? Whether it's a task management tool, whether it's a personal roadmap, whether it's setting up their calendar, whether it's a whiteboard on the wall that says, here are the people I need to talk to and the things I need to do before next week. They're organized about what they're doing. They make a plan. They have deadlines. They have goals and milestones. And they actually go and accomplish those things based upon that plan. They're efficient with resources. And that means your two greatest resources, first being your time, and the second being whatever cash, money, resources you can put behind this thing. You gotta be really efficient with those and lean. No matter how much you have. If you have $1 million in the bank because you got funded to do this thing, that's great, but you should still be efficient with those resources. You should approach that $1 million the same way you would approach it if it was $10,000. You know, how can I make this last as long as I can? How can I make this go as far as I can? How can I get as much use out of this raw material as I can? And it's the same with your time, because I don't know, has anyone heard of Parkinson's law? It's that whatever time you give something to fill, it will fill it. So if you say this task is going to take me an hour, it'll take you an hour. If you say I have all day to accomplish this task, it'll take you all day to accomplish that same task. So being efficient with your resources, both time and money, is the key to really being effective. Not only are they open to feedback, they seek it out. They actively go out and say, what do you think of this? How does this sound to you? Does this resonate with you? Does this make sense? Because as Tim was saying earlier, if you get too close to something, you start to lose the perspective of what somebody new coming to it has. You forget how to disentangle the inherent knowledge you have with subject from what somebody with fresh eyes coming to it has. And sometimes you can toil with a problem for literal days and bring it up to somebody and say, this is what I'm really struggling with. And they may just surprise you with speed of insight immediately that can help you cut through and say, oh, that's really the direction, that's the insight that I needed to help me move forward. And they ask for help. Very similar to seeking out feedback. People who execute know that it doesn't have to be all on your shoulders. You can go and you can find, whether it's channel partners that are actually helping you sell it. You know, the guy I showed earlier on our team, AJ was working for us pro bono in a part-time capacity while he was full-time employed. And he was just doing that because he knew there was an opportunity for him down the line if he did good work. And we got to a point where we had more resources to be efficient with. But we asked him to do that. We said, we know that you're interested in being a part of the team. We know that you can help us get to this point faster where we could actually bring you on full time. Can you help us do that? The worst thing that you can get is a no. And the second best answer you can get to any question is no if you get it quickly. So go and ask for help, and if they say no, great. On to the next person you can ask for help. They're incredibly resilient because of those highs and lows I was telling you about. You're gonna get punched in the mouth, metaphorically, hopefully not literally. But you gotta be able to bounce back up and say, okay, I know that didn't work out, but instead of approaching things that don't work and being super bummed out or saying like, all right, shut the whole thing down, people who execute look at failure and just kind of have this air of, oh, I wonder why that didn't work. And then they actually just go back and figure out why that didn't work. And then they go and they try it again, doing something different, taking the learning from that thing that they learned. And honestly, they're kind of obsessed. If you're gonna go and you're gonna execute on this thing, it's very difficult, and I may venture to say naive, to think that you're going to do it into perpetuity in a part-time, as you find time, if you find time capacity. You have to be pretty obsessed with the problem itself to the point where you're constantly thinking about it, it's on your mind, you're spending time while you're doing other tasks thinking about this problem, because it's just very, very hard to really make change and make something happen, to manifest something that didn't previously exist. And you just don't kind of do that laissez-faire. It comes from really being passionate about it. It comes from a little bit of an obsession. So, want to tell one more story here. Who here has heard of Sidecar? Amazing. A couple people. That's amazing. So, Sidecar was a mobile app that was the first mobile app to bring to market peer-to-peer ride-sharing technology from a mobile phone. This is their original app. As you can see, it had cars on the map, it had pricing, you could get other people who were just driving their cars to come and pick you up. That was in 2011. At the same time, in 2011, there was the existence of Uber, but it was Uber Cab, and it was just it was still the black cab drivers. It was, you kind of have a one-to-one purchasing, basically a personal chauffeur. It was not peer-to-peer. If you had a car, you couldn't pick somebody up. That's what Uber was doing at the time. That Sidecar was taking people from point A to point B by matching them with people with cars. I came across Sidecar in 2013. They were at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and this is one of their first expansions outside of San Francisco. And they were offering free rides the entire festival, which was amazing, because if you've gone to Southwest before or since, you know how expensive and difficult it is to travel around that festival. And they were offering free rides, which is amazing. Uber came in at the same time, and in 2013 they'd started doing this peer-to-peer, and so they were trying to get into Austin at the same time, and so Uber was offering free rides as well. They had raised Sidecar, that is, $10 million at that point to fund this business. It was raised from Google Ventures, not a small deal, Union Square Ventures, also big in the venture capital space, and Sir Richard Branson with his great hair. But Sidecar died. They no longer exist. They brought it to market. They brought it to market 2 years before Uber brought it to market, and they don't exist. Three of us in this room have even heard of them. And they died in 2015 at a point when Lyft was valued at $5.5 billion. And Uber, Uber Cab, which is now Uber, was valued at $65 billion. And they were acquired for, I think the fire sale was $39 million was what their assets were bought for from GE. So why did that happen? And it's because even though Sidecar was innovative and they brought this idea to the market, it doesn't matter. The idea isn't what matters. The idea is a spark, and a necessary spark. You need an idea to make movement and do something, but execution is what changes the world. You got to take that idea and you've got to actually execute on it the way that Uber did. And you may not agree with all their practices. There are certainly other examples of companies who have just made plans that are maybe more ethically correct, but the point remains, they executed on the idea, and they did so faster and better than the competition. So last thing I'll say, I'm kind of a disciple of Seth Godin, who's a marketer, love all of his work, and he has this line that says, to make change, you need to first fall in love with a different version of the world. You personally need to fall in love with a different version of the world so you can make that change that you're looking for manifest. And so I would say, and then you need to go and execute on that change. So please, obviously you guys have had an amazing couple of days of work here, and you've probably made more progress in the last 2 days on this idea than you have maybe made collectively before that, and that's the case in startup weekends most of the time. Keep that momentum going, fall in love with that future version of the world, execute on that, and then please go make that change. Cool, thanks. Oh wow, guys.
Okay, so while we have Jay here, any questions for Jay to follow up? Anything that you'd like to pick his brain about? Yes.
You mentioned how failure is not a bad thing, and it should be encouraged more. And I think it probably is more so on the West Coast and Silicon Valley when a company fails, it's kind of a badge of honor. How do you sort of keep yourself from getting down if something fails and treating it like it is a success and a learning experience and moving on to the next?
I think it's a practice. I have a couple of responses to that. Yes, it's a lot more accepted in places that aren't here a lot of the times, and it's especially more accepted in a startup space than I think it is in a lot of other disciplines. But failure by definition is sort of the outcome that you wanted didn't happen. That's failure. But that could mean a lot of things. Like, you may have discovered some insight through that failure that completely changes everything you're going to do and is a lot more impactful. As far as how do you get better at not letting that get you down, honestly, I think it just comes down to practice and discipline and mindset. The more that you recognize that that's what failure is and that's building you and making you better, then it just gets easier to just say, okay, that didn't work, now what do I do? You got to develop a little bit of a thicker skin. Especially, I've gone through some like sales training, and so I know now that to get a yes, I'm probably going to get 9 no's. And the same is true for failure for me, you know. So it's a race almost to say, how can I quickly get those 9 no's so that I get to that yes? And then I think a lot of what people struggle with failure is they feel ashamed, right? They feel like actual shame. And the thing about shame, and this is also a Seth Godin thing, told you like real disciple here. The thing about shame is you have to agree to feel shame. Someone can try to make you feel shame, but if you do not agree to like take that on and feel that, that's your prerogative. Like, you know, as I grew up, my dad always told me that I was shameless, and I thought that was a bad thing for a while. But now, like, nope, I'm not ashamed because I put myself out there. I tried this thing. It didn't go the way that I wanted, but now that's going to make me better to do the next thing.
Question. I see that your company name is different from so you use your first name, last name for your website.
Yes.
How did you come up with your company name, 1? And 2, how come you used your first name, last name versus the company name for your website?
Yes. Well, so for me as a person, I think of myself as a product, and I have a long play with that. So I've always tried to separate myself from whatever work I'm doing because I don't want to go through sort of an identity crisis where I'm identifying too much with the work that I'm doing, and if something happens to that, now I have to redefine who I am. So that's why I've always kept this a separate thing, because the stuff that I write about, the one-on-one mentorship, coaching that I offer, like that's all for me. The business is a now thing, and it's a into perpetuity thing. I don't know if and when that will not be a thing anymore, but you know, if that ever goes away, then that's not taken away from me. So I always spin off a new website for that. As far as naming goes, I think that's a super interesting question. I had a really hard time doing this for a long time because I always got super literal. It's like I want to make a very literal string of words that very specifically says this is what I'm doing. And I made the conscious choice when I did this business that I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted it to be more emotional. But that did not come arbitrarily. What I did is I created just a blank Word document. And I just started a stream of consciousness typing about what the concept of the business made me think about. And I did that for probably about an hour until I had something like 1,000 words. And then I pulled out of that specific terms and words that I liked, and I put them into a list. And I would go and I'd find synonyms of those words, and I'd start mashing them together. And I just made a bunch of stuff that I thought sounded cool, and I like chewed on it, internalized it, thought about it for a while, and some of them stuck, some of them didn't. And then I went and I searched and I said, okay, is this available for sale as a .com domain? You'd actually be surprised. There's a lot of resources online to talk about the science of naming now, because it's a big thing in startup culture, because there's a ton of startups and not a ton of .com domains left. So it's like, how do you quickly make a name? But I wanted to connect on an emotional level. I wanted something that people were proud to talk about, were proud to share, that also did have a connection to the work I was doing, but was not restricting to what a future version of that work looked like.
Excellent. Let's give it up one more time for Jay. Thanks so much for spending your time with us.